English is a Germanic language of the Indo-European family and is therefore related to most of the languages spoken in Europe and Western Asia, from Iceland to India. Today, it is the second most spoken language in the world after Chinese. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the English language really took off with the invasion of three Germanic tribes who invaded Britain during the 5th century. These tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, crossed the North Sea from what today is Denmark and northern Germany. At that time, the inhabitants of Britain spoke a Celtic language, but most of the Celtic speakers were pushed west and north by the invaders, mainly into what is now Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. The Angles came from England, and the language was called English, from which the words England and English are derived. The Germanic language displaced the indigenous Brythonic language in what would later become England. The original Celtic languages remained in parts of Scotland, Wales, and Cornwall. The four main dialects were Mercian, Northumbrian, Kentish, and West Saxon. The last of these formed the basis of the literary standard of the later Old English period. Although the dominant forms of Middle and Modern English would develop mainly from Mercian. Old English was first written using a runic script called the Futhark, but this was replaced by a version of the Latin alphabet introduced by Irish missionaries in the 8th century. The invading Germanic tribes spoke similar languages, which in Britain developed into what we now call Old English. It really didn't sound or look like English today. Native English speakers now could have great difficulty understanding Old English. Nevertheless, about half of the most commonly used words in the modern English have Old English roots. The words be, strong, and water, for example, derive from Old English. Old English was spoken until around the 11th century. Old English was already very distinct from its Germanic sister languages as a result of many sound changes. For example, changes in how certain sounds were pronounced, chiefly when they occurred near to certain other sounds, and other linguistic developments. In fact, most of the most important changes that have been traced through the persevered Old English documents have already taken place before that time. It is very likely that some of them were already underway and had been completed before the colonization of England. Verbs in Old English show an extensive range of inflections, reflecting distinctions of person and number, tense and mood. Many other distinctions are realized by periprastic constructions, with be, worth, will, or shall, as auxiliary in combination with non-finite forms of the verb. Middle English is framed at its beginning by the after effects of the Norman conquest of 1066 led by William the Conqueror, and in its end by the arrival in Britain of the printing press and by the important social and cultural impacts of the English Reformation and of continental Renaissance ideas. The new conquerors brought with them a kind of French, which became the language of the royal court and the ruling and business classes. For a period, there was a kind of linguistic class division, where the lower classes spoke English and the upper classes spoke French. In the 14th century, English became a dominant in Britain again, but with many French words added. Two very important linguistic developments characterized Middle English. In grammar, English came there really less on inflectional endings and more on word order to convey grammatical information. In vocabulary, English became much more heterogeneous, showing many borrowings from French, Latin, and Scandinavian. With early modern English, it is believed that there was a vowel evolution of English, which happened mainly in the 15th century. While Middle English was largely fragmentary and improvised, early modern English underwent a process of standardization. This came from the London dialect and spread through government. In 1439, Johannes Gutenberg invented the modern printing press, which required an agreed language for printing, and a standardized modern English was formed, based on the London dialect. Early modern English soon grew in popularity, and dictionary creators, writers, lawyers, and the government all began using and sharing this new standardized version of English. Although the pronunciation and grammar of early modern English continued into the late modern age, the vocabulary of English grew considerably, leading to the creation of late modern English, which has many more words arising from the two principal factors. Firstly, the Industrial Revolution and technology created a need for new words. Secondly, the British Empire at its height covered 1/4 of the Earth's surface, and the English language adopted foreign words from many countries. Differences in vocabulary included the introduction of more Latin and Greek words, and Shakespearean words, such as majestic, obscene, and suspicious. From the 17th century, modern English began to spread, and in 1607 the first British settlers arrived in the United States, bringing modern English with them. By the mid-18th century, there were more than 13 established British colonies in North America, and features of their speech and accent can still be heard today.